You're listening to AM 1490 WWPR, Bradenton, Sarasota, Tampa Bay.
Welcome to all my team players out there. This is the Team Leadership Show. That's TEEM. Train, equip, empower, and mobilize leadership. I'm your host, Dr. Cecilia Martin, and I'm excited to be here with you on this magnificent Monday. I don't know about you, but as we say in the South, I'm feeling mighty fine tonight. I want to remind you about my new book. I'm excited about it. Incarcerated, Escaping the Prison of Your Mind. Now, many of you already know about the book because you pre-ordered, but for those who don't know, it's sold on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Trinity Broadcast Network or TBN, Trilogy TV, and everywhere books are sold. So that's Incarcerated, Escaping the Prison of Your Mind. Now, I know many of you are waiting for me to talk about it, and I promise I'm going to. I really am. But in the meantime, I want you to know I'm just as excited as you are. So continue with your book clubs, keep sending your selfies, your videos, and your feedback. You can text me anytime at 713-252-1978. That's 713-252-1978. I have a powerful headliner with me tonight, Pastor Eboni Speight. She has been impacting lives through ministry for over 20 years. She has a special calling to focus on the holistic needs of individuals through impacting and strengthening communities. In 2004, Pastor Speight was licensed as a minister in the gospel, and about 10 years later, in 2015, she and her husband, Pastor Willie Speight, founded the Vision Impact Center. Now, in the professional world, Eboni serves as the Executive Vice President and the Chief Operating Officer at a national nonprofit. And she's most known for helping organizations ensure a culture of care, fiscal stability, and operational efficiency. Eboni received her certification in executive leadership from Cornell University, and she strives for her impact to be seen, not just in the church, but in all the places she has been called and assigned. Welcome, Pastor Eboni Speight. How are you?
I'm doing great, Dr. Cecilia. Thank you so much for having me on tonight.
Yeah, I'm so glad to finally speak with you. I've heard so many good things. I'm really excited. Now, tell me about your hometown. Where were you born? Where did you grow up?
So I was born in Washington, D.C., and I grew up in Capitol Heights, Maryland. I was raised by my single mom, and also my grandmother grew up with 6 aunts and uncles in a small little house in Capitol Heights, Maryland.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Now, so we have that in common. I too was raised by a single mom. And, I was born and raised in Texas, but we actually lived in DC for quite a few years. And in my younger years, my mom left Texas and moved to Washington, D.C. So I'm and then as an adult, when I left high school, I moved to Maryland to go to Morgan State University and ended up staying there for like 17 years. So I consider the East Coast my second home, that's for sure.
Yes.
Now, how did you get into ministry? You're a pastor, so I want to make sure I emphasize that you are Pastor Speight, not just Executive Director Speight, not just Mrs. Speight, but you are a pastor. And you, I'm told you started in ministry at 16 years old?
That's correct. Yes, I did. And so had a life-changing experience with God at 12 years old, and really developed a love for the Word of God, a love for prayer, And really knew at that time that I had a call on my life. Just was you had unique experiences. My grandmother would catch me talking to young adults and adults at that young age about their life and counseling. And so I started teaching Bible study at 16. I was a choir director, a praise and worship leader, and did evangelism with my friends on the weekends. So I just really immersed myself in ministry at a young age.
That is incredible. At 16, you were teaching Bible study.
Yes.
You were leading praise and worship.
Yes.
Okay, so you sing.
I do sing.
You want to give us a little something, something?
You know what? I actually have a preaching voice from yesterday, so probably.
Okay. All right, I'll let you off the hook. Next time you got to sing for us, Eboni, just give us a bar or two, you know. Okay, so you said that you knew pretty much at age 12, you had a life-changing experience with God. Did he speak to you? I think it's important to know because at that age, a lot of kids are wondering, and teens are wondering about themselves, about God, about their purpose. And I remember being 12, thinking the world was going to come to an end. You know, like, what was the point? I didn't think I'd live past 25. So at 12, wow. You know, tell me more about that life-changing experience. Did he speak to you? Where were you?
Yeah, so I was at a revival at my church and had a, experience with God. And one of the first things that I remember is having a conversation with my grandmother first and telling my grandmother that I felt I had a call on my life. And she affirmed that. She reaffirmed. She told me that was her prayers. And so my grandmother really was the first person to not only encourage my call, but to affirm my call. She really affirmed the things that she saw in me. She confirmed the things that she prayed for in me. And so, but at that time, the church I was going to did not, women were missionaries. They weren't really like preachers per se. And my grandmother was a preacher, just to be clear. But, there was just a different association with women preaching at that time. And so, my pastor was just like, he didn't know what to do with me. That was his exact words to me, that, I was too young. So they moved me to the adult Bible study. But that was about the extent of it. I was not, only my grandmother really sewed into me at that time. And that was it. I just had that firm belief. I knew it was my calling.
Now, did you feel like at your age, though, at 16, we're really starting to swell, but especially as you grew in your teen years and by age 16, you're teaching Bible study, and I'm sure holding a lot of other responsibilities in the church. Did you feel like you were missing out on your childhood at all? Do you feel like you were missing out on some fun things, that most teenagers do, or no?
I did not, because I had just a really well-balanced life. Like my grandmother, always encouraged me to have fun, like go to King's Dominion. I mean, I did a lot of things, even though I was a leader in church at that time. I think the most awkward part of it was leading adults, because I was the choir director and the praise and worship leader. Leading adults was strange, and leading adults,
that's awkward.
It was very awkward, and leading adults that was my family.
Yes.
was very that was an awkward experience, but I never felt like I missed out on anything. I had a really balanced childhood, I felt like.
Okay. Did you find that they took you seriously?
I would say that they saw the call on my life. So the adults took me seriously. I think that, sometimes when the leaders that were older maybe did not have the impact that of the people that I actually did Bible studies with or led on the choir. I was a very serious person. So, just with like prayer and like pouring into people, I've had that since that age. And so I was really serious. And so I think they took me serious, but it was still very awkward, particularly like with your family.
I'm sure. Yeah. I'm telling you. And speaking of family, you now have 2 sons that are also involved in ministry. And I know, one is named don't tell me, David Elijah, because they have strong biblical names. And then I want to say the other one is Kaylin Joshua. Did I get it
right?
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Okay, I was not looking. I wasn't. Because I said, oh my gosh, they have really strong biblical names. Do they live up to them? Are they sort of powerhouses like you were in ministry at your age? What do they do in the ministry with you guys?
I mean, they have absolutely lived up to their names. My oldest son, Kaylin Joshua, I knew that he would be a drummer when he was in my stomach. And
Wow.
every time my brother-in-law would play the drums, I could see his little feet come out my stomach. And so his name means warrior. And that's what he does at our church. He's our drummer, and he creates that sound of war. And he's very powerful. And we used to have living room worship at our home. We still do at times. And I really saw his prophetic gift really come out during those meetings. So definitely at a young age, I could see their gifts. And my youngest son, David, is our keyboard player. This was maybe 4 years ago when he was like 12, we had to move to a new building, and the musicians that we had played another service. And he told us that he wanted to play. And he started teaching himself on the keyboard. He got lessons. What? Yes, he started teaching himself songs. And since then, we have created about 30 songs together.
Wow.
Me and my boys in our church. And so it's been an amazing, doing ministry with them has been amazing, and watching them just create the sound that's in them. It's unique to them. And I love that. So yeah, I did not have to pressure them. He asked me if he could play.
Wow.
And my son, my drummer, he has been playing since he was 6 months old. He has been playing with sticks, pens, anything he could find. Yeah.
So how old are they now?
16 and 18.
16 and 18. Okay. Wow. That's impressive. That's quite impressive to have young boys, especially African-American boys, doing something positive and in church. And I'm sure they're doing great in school. And one of them, are they graduated, the 18-year-old, or is he graduating this year?
Yes, so I homeschooled them since middle school.
Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Because we're going to get to the Superwoman, Wonder Woman part of you. Okay. Wait a minute. Have you always homeschooled them?
I started middle school. So they both started homeschooling in middle school.
Oh my goodness. Now that's a whole nother ball of wax to talk about. Okay. So when COVID hit, you were good.
I was good because we were already homeschooling. We were already home. And I was able to give a lot of parents tips of how to homeschool and full-time work, because I full-time work, the whole time that they were homeschooled. So my oldest boy graduated this past year. So he starts college next month. I'm so proud of him. So he's going to be at the Music Institute in California. He's going to start online, which I'm really glad about. And then my youngest son graduates this upcoming year. So he's a senior in high school.
Wow. What does he have in mind to do?
Business technology.
Okay. Wow. Okay. We're going to get to that super S on your chest in just a second. Homeschooling executive. I mean, you're truly every woman. Now, you and your husband, I know you started the Impact Center. You guys, the Vision Impact Center, you guys have been married for 21 years and you have your 2 kids. What is the secret to a loving relationship after 21 years?
I mean, I would say that, we started really strong. My husband I don't feel like anymore, but he is more of like a reserved personality, and I'm a really outgoing personality. Yeah, he brings a great balance to our relationship, to my life. But I think, communication, listening to one another. But, I think one of the most important things that we have incorporated is in intentional togetherness and intentional breaks, and really making sure that we took time to vacation, just each other, vacation with the boys, really spend time with each other, date nights. Each quarter we did little go-aways. And so I think that, it's that intentionality that has really kept our love strong, but also has kept the mentality of God then us, and then everybody else. People asked us, like, I said to my husband that, the kids come after us. And a lot of people were like, no, that's wrong. Your kids come first. But if we're not healthy and strong, that affects our children. And so I appreciate us being able to take that into every dimension, God, then us, and then all of the other things. So I think that's kept us really strong.
Yeah, I like that intentionality of it all, because especially if you're homeschooling, it's kind of like entrepreneurship. You feel like you never get a break, really. I mean, but you're intentional about taking breaks and intentional about spending time together. And I agree, because a lot of people do say that the children come first, but you're right. If you're too unhealthy, cranky, tired, bitter adults, you're not much good to your children. So yeah, I can see that.
And having them back to back, like, I had the boys back to back, they're 17 months apart. And so, I think it was really important for us to figure out not really a balance. You can't really have a balance when you have two small kids, right? It's really figuring out how to make it work, figuring out schedules and making sure we had that intentional time. I think that was just most important.
Now tell me, how did the Vision Impact Center come into play? I know you like to focus on the holistic needs of individuals and you like to strengthen and build communities, but what was the genesis of the Vision Impact Center?
So when I met my husband, I knew he would be a pastor. He was for a long time saying he didn't think so, but I knew he would pastor. And I would say, a few years into our marriage, he started talking about it. And at first it was called like the Convergence Center. But it was always this idea of bringing people together, bringing their gifts together, seeing people developed, and doing that in communities. And so it really started a lot of years before it started. And I think that one of the things that about our journey is that we kept having the conversation until it was right. Like the first envision that we visioned was really a churchy model. He had a lot of churchiness. And I was like, that's not it. That can't be it, And so it wasn't until Vision Impact Center and we could see a model, which we call the Acts 2 model, where we could see a model that went beyond four walls, that it both clicked for us. And so that's how it started. And it was my youngest son that, really started, when we started talking about what audience that we would go and reach, that said, let's go to the homeless. And so that really, pushed us into outreach and meeting the needs of the homeless, but also, we have an internal model as well of seeing our members really replicating and the model of discipleship. And so not just discipling in the gospel, which is so important, but also discipling in life, making sure that you're successful, not just with a mic in your hand, but you're also successful in the marketplace. You're also successful with your family. And just to be very, frank, that's not something I saw growing up. I saw a lot of people that were great in ministry, but bad with family. And it's something that, my husband and I just determined we weren't going to do. And so in replicating this model, being holistic, really seeing people win everywhere, winning in your personal life, winning in your marketplace, winning in your ministry. You were created to win everywhere. And so, so that Vision Impact Center, and so impacting and strengthening communities started, in the DC area. but has expanded to Cape Town, South Africa. We have a church there now. Pakistan, we have a church there. And we also have a church in Kenya. So the model has expanded from local ministry here to international ministry that also replicates this model of holistic discipleship.
That's amazing. And what I really hear you saying is that you started with a vision, but you had to refine it several times and find what type of framework was a good fit for you. And, you know, we talk about this among leaders all the time, that when you think you start with one concept, you can't just end there because it evolves over time. You know, think about, you know, what we were doing in the 80s and 90s, just how natural things evolved over time. It's the same thing with vision. It would be the similar concept, the root concept, but it evolves and you have to refine it and reframe it and make sure that it's moving in the direction that really is aligned and a good fit for your life and for your calling, for your purpose, for your gifting. And so that's encouraging to hear, because there are a lot of leaders out there that really need to just sit down and refine their vision and not try to do it the way someone else is doing it. And like you just said, not to be stuck in an old paradigm because that's the way my mom did it or my uncle did it or whomever, but to make sure that it's your vision, because if not, it's not going to work for you. It's absolutely not going to work for you. I just love that. And you hit a sore spot, I think, with families and ministry. And we don't have time to talk about that tonight, but there have been many families in ministry, like you said, that actually kind of been torn apart, you know, because of, you know, one working here, the other one's waiting at home, you know, just all kinds of things, you know, and I'm grateful to hear someone like yourself and other leaders in the 21st century who have seen that and are addressing it and making sure, like you said, there is a more holistic approach to how we do ministry, how we do family, how we do life. So I just love that. I love that. Now, I understand that you are the executive vice president and the chief operating officer. And, you know, I just gasp, you know, I'm like, how in the world? I mean, why did you end up wearing two hats? Those are two major hats in a nonprofit. How did you fold into both of those roles? And why are you holding them? Is there no one there that can do the job?
Great question. And so, you know, I've been in executive leadership in nonprofits for the last couple of years. And one of the things that I think has been key in each of the roles that I've fulfilled and the last 3 nonprofits I've been in is when I come into an organization, often I'm able to identify the need very quickly. I've been in my current role for 6 or 7 months. I've been here and started out as vice president and chief operating officer, and had, you know, what I've done is had all operations, oversight of all operations. Once I came here, one of the things that I identified is some structural work that needed to happen. And so when you identify something in the marketplace, often it becomes the thing that you are then assigned to do. I was, you know, happy to be promoted, happy to take on the role of really stretching myself to go beyond operations, to manage all of the senior level staff there, and have been doing that for a few months, and I'm really enjoying it. I think that you know, the question of if there is anyone else is I'm really empowering my operations team to lead at another dimension. And so it's not only that I'm being promoted and I'm being stretched, but also it has allowed my team to be stretched, and it is allowing me to have a different level of leadership under me. And so I'm really enjoying it. And I came into being by identifying a problem and I became the solution.
Oh my gosh, that is like it, because people don't understand that you have to answer a problem. You have to be the answer to a problem. And that's really executive leadership, being the answer to a problem. Now, but 6 months, okay, now a year from now, you might be feeling a little stressed because with those two heavy hats on, you think, why not consult?
I think a couple of things that I think about it. I love the organizational structure. My husband has always been pushing me to consult. And, my husband is he definitely saw me with this executive hat on a lot earlier than I did. So he's always been pushing me to like consult, but I really love the organizational structure. I think there is something about helping an organization to go from one place to another that I really strive in. And also, creating this new space of leadership has also helped me to think about like what the structure looks like and making sure that there's support underneath and across to facilitate, this kind of next level of position that we have created, this executive vice president. And so one of the reasons why I don't see myself getting burnt out is because we're doing intentional strategic planning and work to make sure that we have the right kind of team so that we are, as you talked about operational efficiency, making sure that we have the right team so that the load is distributed properly. Absolutely. So I think that's an important piece of, if you have to solve a problem, you have to make sure that you're also setting up the right systems and people around, what you've then created.
Absolutely. We had Dr. Meredith Davis on a few weeks ago, and she was talking about strategic planning. Everybody likes to say they're doing strategic planning, but if you're doing it in isolation, you aren't planning. You're supposed to be doing strategic planning with a team.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So to hear that you do have a good team in place really makes a difference. And, particularly with nonprofits, there are certain misconceptions that I want to talk about because one is that, and some of it may be true to some extent, but one is that there's always, to some extent, a money issue because many of them may be operating off grants. And then there's always a staffing issue because you need the money to staff, right? To have a nice functioning staff.
Sure.
But I believe there's a misperception here somewhere because I worked with a nonprofit and the president's base salary was $300,000.
That's correct.
His base. It didn't have anything to do with, all the write-offs and travel and perks or anything like that. So I'm like, why do many nonprofits or people who see nonprofits have this deficient perception of them financially?
I think that, watching the evolution of nonprofits, I've been working for nonprofits since 2000. And I will say over the last 22 years, there has been an evolution that has occurred. I've seen a lot of nonprofits find the spaces of stability. I think back in 2000, I will say that I do think that there was some issues with like finding that steady stream with a lot of nonprofits, right? But you also have different kinds of nonprofits. You have the direct service nonprofits that service the community. And then you have advocacy nonprofits like the one that I work for that has a different stream of funding, right? And so I think that's one thing is that it depends on the type of nonprofit, when it's direct service oriented and or if it is, community-based, all of those things can be dependent on what kind of income flows through. But you are absolutely right that nonprofits are no longer the space that don't have competitive salaries. We have competitive salaries, we have competitive benefits. And so nonprofit space has definitely leveled up over the last couple of years for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one that I worked for, I was well paid. I was like, I don't know what people are talking about. But I will say this though, when I think about smaller businesses that are nonprofits, I find that they do struggle finding consistent revenue streams. And I review grants for multiple federal agencies, which I won't mention because that wouldn't be ethical to do. For some organizations that are submitting to receive, a 4-year grant, a 3-year grant, it could, range anywhere from, $1 million to $3 million or more, what have you. And I find, unfortunately, that many of the smaller or newer agencies struggle with writing for a competitive grant because you have the more established ones that are more financially solvent and that have maybe a grant writer and all of that stuff. So what would you say, what kind of advice would you give to smaller businesses, nonprofits that are struggling to find some type of consistent stream of income? Do you think that they need to do more fundraisers, or do you think they need to hire a grant writer?
That's a great question. You know, part of my consulting business is helping small businesses and nonprofits. And two things that I would say. The first one is I think that it's really important to have a plan. I think that that's one of the things that I've seen the most, Dr. Cecilia, is smaller nonprofits not having a business plan, right? A plan for fundraising, a plan for staffing, because it's based on volunteers. I think that, you know, sometimes it's like, take whatever we can get, but there must be an investment. And I think that that's a misnomer. Like, you know, when you have a LLC or for-profit business, it's understood that there has to be some level of investment. And that's the same for a nonprofit. There has to be some level of investment, whether it's investing in a grant writer or it's investing in getting the plan. There has to be some level of investment if your nonprofit is going to become profitable. And so I would say that that's one, you know, two of the biggest things that I see is, you know, that planning, that strategic planning that's needed with a board, with people that have expertise, and then also lacking that investment. There must be an investment.
Yeah, many of them don't have a well-established board or a diverse board that can actually be a thought partner with them in the process of development. And I think that's important too. So I'm gonna be transparent here for a second. I'm putting myself out there on this one. So I'm gonna take it. I want to take whatever you say. So this has been my theory. I just started a nonprofit a couple of years ago, and this is my strategy. You can tell me if it's a good one or not.
Okay.
But my goal has been to use my for-profit to fund my nonprofit. Is that a good strategy ever?
So I've done the same. And let me tell you about it, right? Because I can do the same because I have a full-time job. And this is one thing that I tell people, because I was in an era where three things I will say before I kind of get to your answer is like, you know, when I first started with nonprofit, people told me, do not get into nonprofit. You will never make money, right? So that was one thing. But secondarily, you know, once I started my own nonprofit in 2014, one of the things that came about is, you know, my husband asked me the hard questions. And so I think that you have to start with the hard questions of, you know, where is this going? You know, is the expectation of your nonprofit to become, you know, your only source of income, to become, you know, your main business? And the answer for that question for me was no. It was something that I wanted as a legacy. It was a legacy nonprofit for my grandmother. It's named after my grandmother. It's about mentoring, building up women, building up teens. And so that was the purpose for me. The purpose for me was not to create a nonprofit that was as big as some of the ones that I work for, or that became the source of income. So I think it's about purpose and knowing what the purpose of your nonprofit is. And if the purpose is to build a nonprofit where you can distribute jobs and where, you know, it is now making its own, you know, that's going to be your only business, then you have to approach it a lot differently. So for me, approaching it from this angle has been great. It's allowed me to have impact. It's allowed me to have the impact that I want to see. And, you know, it's allowed my for-profit business has allowed me to do that at the level that that I desire to do it at this stage. If I ever wanted to take it to the next level, then I know that I have to invest differently. And so that would be my advice is, taking it to the next level takes a different kind of investment.
Absolutely. So I'm thank you, because now I feel better, because that was my whole point. I want to make impact with a nonprofit, but I know that there are some people, and so that's why I took the route of, for the most part. Now, don't get me wrong, I've done minor fundraisers here or there.
Sure.
And I intend to, like you said, build the capacity of the nonprofit over time. But in the meantime, my strategy is for my for-profit, for as much as possible, to fund the nonprofit, so that I can focus more on impact, like you said, of what I want it to do versus what I want it to be in terms of giving jobs and things of that nature. That's what the for-profit is for. But again, there are a lot of small nonprofits out there that are really striving to create some strong revenue because they need help with their own staffing. They need help with volunteers in the community and organizing. And like you said, though, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because you do have to make an investment. So you have to take the small money that you have and figure out, like you said, am I going to develop this plan, or am I going to hire a grant writer? And, what do I need to put into place in order to be strength in a position to receive the funds, to get a grant, because it's very competitive now. Absolutely. And even when you talk about nonprofiting in general, churches, oh my goodness.
I have helped so many people start nonprofits, Cecilia. And I will tell you, one of the things that I think is not clear going, like starting a nonprofit and maintaining it, it's a business. It's a lot of work, right? Yeah. And so that's why I say, like, you really need to know what the purpose is, right? If you really want to have impact and that's your purpose, but if you want to build a business, then you have to invest in building a business. And that's what I think, that's kind of the nonprofits that I work for, advocacy organization, their impact is about lobbying and doing different kinds of impact. That community touch piece is something that, you really have to invest in. There's a lot of competition in that space. Let me say it that way. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of competition in that space. So you have to come in with the investment kind of on that level to be able to compete, whether you're a church or you're just a community nonprofit.
And let me jump in here, because let's say this for the record, that if you are running a church, you are running a business.
Absolutely.
And I listen, there are so many ministries out there that are not running their church like a business. Absolutely. And it's a disservice to their members. It's a disservice to the community, because it's, a mismanagement of God's word. And I'm trying to be gentle about it, but it's so scary how many ministries do not see their church as a business. It's not an either or, it is an and both.
It is an and both.
Yeah.
Because, without some of the, all of the tithes and offering and things we receive, we actually need fiscal responsibility, fiscal stability, and, not moving from one place to another every month, every 6 months, right? Your members need that stability so that they can work in their gifts and callings and not have to worry about the stability of the church. So I absolutely agree with that. It's a business.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And, I've been, with some that, I'm just saying on the consulting side, I've been with some that, and as a member, but that could see that as a business, but it was because they came out of a strong corporate setting. And then there are some that came in through a different type of setting, like you said, maybe they were homegrown and they, inherit the church or whatever, or they've never run a business in their life, or maybe they never really had a leadership role in the corporate setting, and they struggled to then manage the church's business, in a way that is one, professionally pleasing to God, but also just in a natural sense that, hey, this really is something I need to be doing reports. I need to, at least try to stipend people who work so hard all the time for me. I remember volunteering for this church that I went to for many years. And it blew me away that we would volunteer as college students and as young adults. We grew out of college and all that good stuff. And they actually would stipend us at the end. It always blew my mind. Like, they thought of enough to just give us a little something for working a conference. We were just volunteering and things like that. But the fact that they thought of us enough as workers, not just, oh, you're giving it, because we were giving our time, our labor, and all that good stuff. And a lot of times the ministry heads don't see that these people are working for you.
Yeah.
And they're working hard, and they're taking vacation time and time away from their family, and they're spending their gas money and et cetera. But when you see it as a business, you really do think differently about those things. So I'm glad that you are out there helping churches and other nonprofits to really build their own capacity to run it as a business. And I saw a gentleman on TV who, I wish I could remember the name of the church, but it started off small, and then he started a local football. You may have heard of this story because it was a national story. He started a local community football team, and then the church grew exponentially.
Wow.
And he said he actually realized that he didn't know anything about management and managing a business. And as a pastor, he went back to school to get to take courses in business management so he could learn how to run the church better. He was like, he realized, oh my God, I don't know how to pay my staff. I don't know how to do the books. I don't even know the right people to hire for this. And, all of like you said, that fiduciary responsibility is very important as well. And I was happy to hear that story, that he realized that and actually went back to school to learn to do God's business better.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of which, I'm glad you tapped into that. What are some of the things that you look for a business or a nonprofit that is financially healthy and financially stable? Because I know your forte is making sure they have financial stability. What are 2 or 3 things that you look for to say, okay, they are on good ground here?
Yeah, I think one of the things is having financial systems is really important. So there has to be proper financial systems, a budget, accounting software. And so that's one of the things that I look at. I remember a lot of years ago when I first got into this, Cecilia, I would go into an organization, a nonprofit. So thankful I had my husband during those years, but I would go in there, and the first thing I would do is get in the accounting records, get in the books, look around, and I could tell very quickly if, they've been maintaining their accounting, and look at bank statements, make sure that there was money in the bank. And sometimes I left those roles in days. I'm glad I had the flexibility. I'm so grateful for my husband. I would call him on the phone and say, "This is not it," and just keep on moving, because not having those systems always tells me that there may not just be a problem with lack of money, but there also may be a problem coming down the pike that will be a legal consequence. So financial systems is important. Having the right financial systems is important. You never want IRS or anybody else to come looking for you. I would say the other thing is having leaders that know money. And so you can't have one person that's the money person. When I go into an organization, one of the first things that I do is train their senior leadership on budgeting. I think that is really important, that I'm not the only person that knows the numbers. I've worked for a lot of CEOs, executive directors that know numbers, that are numbers people, but then in some cases are not money people. And I've had to, train my CEO on how to read financial statements, train up the board on how to read financial statements. And so the people that have governance and fiduciary responsibility need to be trained in finances. They need to know how to read a balance sheet. They need to know what the profit and loss statement is. And so that's the second thing I would say is the leaders need to know money. And then the third thing that I look for is there a financial plan? What's our plan? What's our sustainability plan? How are we going to get from one year to the next? And that's how I started making my, being an executive, that's how I started making my decisions about what job to take. I listened to the CEO, executive director, I listened to their plan. And that's one of the questions I ask is, you know, what's your sustainability model? What's your funding model? And so that would be the three things that I would state.
Wow, that's good stuff. I hope people really reel this back and listen to it as many times as you can. I mean, this is like good pre-financial advice and good advice on running a business, on running your nonprofit, things that you need to have in place so that when you are trying to get the grant, so you don't really look foolish, because the thing is, what I find is once you put yourself out there, oh Father, and if it's not right, if it's not good, then you're building a bad reputation, and you don't want that, because like you said, people are going to scrutinize your books. They're going to want to see an audit. They're going to want to see, like you said, profit and loss. And if you don't know how to do those things, where can they go to learn? I know they can come to you. Like I said, I hope they replay this and connect with you. But are there any self-learning tools that they can start with their board, so maybe they can all learn together?
Sure. And so there are sites that definitely assist with things. Board Source is one of them that has a lot of information on it. Board Source is a nonprofit organization that has a lot of downloadable resources. So that's one of the things I would state. And then there are the Bridgespan group is another one. So there are definitely some online organizations that you can pull different information from. But one of the things that I always say is, like, you know, utilize that and an expert.
Yes.
You need an expert, right? And like, I think that is, I can always, when I come to an organization, I mean, I have came into organizations, Dr. Cecilia, and I don't have my CPA. I don't have a master's of accounting. And I will tell you that I've come into a lot of organizations in frames with people who had CPAs, people that had master of accountings. Nonprofit accounting is a specialty.
Yes,
and it is, you know, when we talk about an expert, it's someone that is an expert in that industry. And that is important. You know, I'm sure some people may disagree with me, but I'm telling you from experience that I've cleaned up from CPAs and masters of accounting. That's not a boast. There is a need for an expert in that specific industry. And I think that that's something that nonprofits, they don't look at, or they don't look for. Sometimes they look for just the degree or the certification, but you also need the expertise in your industry. That's an important piece.
You are so right about it. I mean, a lot of people too think if they have a CPA or MBA, they got to know what they're doing, but it's so not true. There's a specialty. And like you said, there's an expertise needed for nonprofit management. It's a whole different ball of wax. And and people need to understand that. You know, speaking of building capacity, who are some of your mentors? Who's taught you what you know? Who do you look towards and look up to?
Sure. And so I would say in the nonprofit space, I've been really fortunate to work for some great organizations with great leaders. When I become a part of an organization, I'm careful about who I work for. And a lot of the presidents, CEOs, executive directors have really, you know, take me under their wing, allowed me to go to donor meetings, and really expanded my palette, you know, from just being an operations person. I say just because sometimes that's looked at as like, oh, you just do operations, but has really allowed me to take on different kinds of responsibilities. So I would say that, you know, when I moved from a manager to a director, that was something that I wanted to do back in like 2006 to 2005. I remember having a woman that I worked for, and she was my supervisor, and I asked her to be my mentor. And so I've been really intentional about, and I told her what I wanted to do, that I wanted to be a finance director, finance and grants director at that time. And so, you know, that's one space of mentorship, has been the professional space. But I would, you know, also say, you know, my bishop, you know, really Bishop McCargo, one of my spiritual dads, really introduced me to the concept
Bishop McCargo?
Absolutely.
I think I know him.
I'm sure you do. From Grandpa Bishop, Archbishop Dennis.
Yes.
Absolutely. And so you know, he really introduced me to marketplace, being a marketplace prophet and being a marketplace kingdom leader. And that revelation really changed my life. Really, I started to see myself different in the marketplace. I was a part of his church at that time, when I started to level up in my career. And it really was those spiritual teachings, those kingdom values, kingdom principles that really helped me think differently about how I positioned myself in the marketplace. And so, you know, I would say Bishop McCargo up close, and Archbishop Dennis from afar.
Yes.
You know, I was at Kingdom Worship Center as a teen, and watching Bishop Dennis as someone who had, you know, corporate acumen. All of those things were really investments into my future that I didn't even know, you know, those impartations that I didn't even know would come back alive at an older age. And so those, you know, are some of the impartations, mentorship that I've received.
My goodness. Well, that explains a lot. I'm sitting up here like, okay, she's talking my language. Gosh, Bishop Dennis grew us. He birthed us and grew us spiritually. But not just that, you know, people may not understand what we're talking about, but I'm talking about in the natural, where he taught us to handle our business. Like you said, the corporate acumen, the business acumen that he had. Many of us at a very young age were well accomplished. You know, we learned to be financially stable, or we grew into being debt free. We had concepts that maybe we didn't get from family members or from, you know, in college, you know, because maybe you weren't majoring in business. But this man, and, you know, yeah, of course, Bishop McCargo came from there, you know, they are very close, but he taught us, like you said, to be men and women in business.
Yes.
And that was one of the most spiritual high callings that you could have. Like, people don't realize that Jesus talked about money a lot in the New Testament because it matters. I mean, there are over 2,000 scriptures that are about financial management. And even if you listen to the teachings of Miles Monroe and people like that, like having an understanding of kingdom principles as it relates to financial management, oh my gosh, it really can change your life. And like you said, so it doesn't matter. You don't have to be working full time at the church in ministry. You can be who you are and be your most excellent self, and be in leadership, and be a Christian in business.
Absolutely.
Right on your job.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, that explains a lot. I don't even want to go down that road because we would go over time talking about that. Now I can see clearly. I get it now. Before we run out of time, I want you to tell me about the National Skills Coalition Public Knowledge and Public Interest Network. What is that? How did you come across it? And are you a member? Is it something other people can join? What are they about exactly?
Okay, so those were my last 3 jobs before the one I have now. And I started in 2004 with this organization called U.S. Action. And I was there. I worked there for almost 8 years. And from there, I was a part of this almost merger that happened. And anyway, went to work for the Competitor Public Interest Network. And so these nonprofits, Public Knowledge, National Skills Coalition, all of these nonprofits are advocacy organizations that, you know, work on a lot of different issues, mostly political policy issues. And so I got into most of these positions by being recruited into these different organizations. And so I would say that, while they're political organizations, so they may not align with all of our listeners, all of the views may not align with all of our listeners. And so, but these are the places where I've had my career.
Mm-hmm. I don't think people realize how important advocacy is. I worked for a nonprofit some years ago in Washington, D.C., and that was actually my first time being on the Hill advocating for something educational, So
Absolutely.
Like you said, I mean, there's so many benefits to working for a nonprofit, supporting a nonprofit. You can really find yourself into arenas that you would have never otherwise experienced. A lot of people think it's just about climbing the corporate ladder and, the money and the salary, but there really are some great, like I said, fluent, financially solvent nonprofits where they have competitive salaries,
Absolutely.
They have great perks, and they have a connection to the community or cause for which they are established.
Absolutely.
And that makes a difference. So working for a nonprofit, you really can have the best of both worlds, I found.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with that. And really it's become my life's work. I really, a lot of my family works for government, and it is a part of my life's work, not only to have a career and a position that I love finances and HR and like all the operation stuff. I love it. I mean, it's just something that I can wake up and feel like I have purpose, not just my ministry purpose, my God purpose, but also my career purpose. And so it's become my life's work. I love it.
Now, if people want to get in touch with you for some consulting or guidance, and of course, you'll decide whether or not they are a good fit to help them in their nonprofit endeavors, how can they reach out to you? How can they connect with you?
Sure. So they can reach me on email, and my email is Eboni, Eboni, at ebtech, EBBTECH.org. That's my consulting company. So if people are interested, EbTech Consulting, you can find that on Facebook as well. They also can check out we have vision journals. So if they are interested in taking their life, making it plain, making the vision plain, we have vision journals for women, vision journals for men. They can also find that on my Facebook page. I'm Eboni, Eboni, last name Speight, Speight. And my church just released some music, Vision Impact music. So you can look that up. It's our church sound. My boys are playing songs that we wrote. And I also have a book, I Am a Girl, for young ladies. It's a workbook. I
wanted to ask you about that. Tell me about I Am a Girl. I really wanted to surprise you that I knew about it, but now you done said it. So
yeah, so I Am a Girl is one of the programs of Yvonne's Heart, which is my nonprofit organization. And the I Am a Girl, gifted, inspired leader. And really that space came to be about with, as I stated, my grandmother, and she always like opened up our home to people. And so that legacy of helping young ladies to see themselves as leaders has just went from I Am a Girl to Vision Impact Center. Really that impartation. So seeing young ladies be leaders, even at a young age, is something that the book talks about, and grooms young ladies into thinking like leaders.
That's wonderful. So you have a lot of resources, and folks, don't worry about it. You can replay this on several platforms. We're going to be making a huge announcement soon about all the wonderful resources where we are now. It's just incredible. But you can go to iHeartRadio and replay this over and over again, so that you can take some good notes. I have a paper here. I'm just scribbling stuff down as you talked. And I was like, wait a minute, I can go back and listen to this and reel it back over and over again. I can't thank you enough for coming tonight. I think too, you talked about wanting to make an impact, not just in ministry, but wherever you're called or assigned. And clearly you are walking in your calling and in your assignment. And it's just so wonderful to see. And I wish you and your family all the best. And thank you so much for all of the resources and the tips that you've given us tonight. There will be many nonprofits that will definitely be able to build their own capacity from this. So thank you again. And I think they're giving us the cue.
Yes, thank you so much.
I know. All right. Till next time. Thank you to my team players out there. Good night.
You're listening to 1490 AM, WWPR, Bradenton, Sarasota.